Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
And begin by telling about this past Christmas. We had the privilege of having my mother-in-law, Ruth, visit with us over the Christmas holidays for 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, there was 1 week that was spent also with a visitation by my brother-in-law and his wife. So those three, along with my wife Diane and I, and actually my son Troy also, who lives nearby, spent a lot of time at our home and a lot of hours working on a 1,000-piece puzzle. I don't know if you've ever worked on a 1,000-piece puzzle. I never had before, but it was something. And a lot of it, the picture was a lot of one shade. So it's like really hard to find all the pieces that fit together. And it is a great challenge. Well, anyway, we came to the end after hours in working through the days of enjoying as a group at Christmas. And we couldn't find 3 pieces. And that was kind of upsetting to us because, you know, you want to complete something. You want the whole picture. You want to just have that feeling of completion. And so we went high and low, and we turned everything upside down and the furniture. And my son got out a flashlight, and we looked through the sofa and everything. We actually did find 2 of the pieces, but there was 1 piece that we just didn't find. So weeks later, we were moving my mother-in-law from Wisconsin, where she lives, in an assisted living facility there. We were moving her to Colorado Springs, where she was be near lots of family and grandkids, an assisted living place there. So in the process of moving, they were unloading everything and putting them in her new apartment and clothing and whatnot, and out drops a puzzle piece. Can you believe it? Unbeknownst to her, mysteriously, this puzzle had traveled from Texas back to Wisconsin, where she had been living, and then to Colorado Springs, and somehow popped out. And she had no idea whether it had fallen into a pocket or a cuff of her slacks or what. It is amazing. Well, there are elements of life, are they not, that are much like a puzzle. There may be some pieces that feels missing. We don't have the whole picture, and we so want to get that picture. There can be challenges and difficulties and circumstances and crises that we may be going through, and we just don't have a sense of what is going on here, what is the whole picture. And so when we don't understand for a period of time the whole dynamics about it, we can come to a place where we even may ask the question, where is God in all of this? Where is the good in all of this? Where is God in all of this? And if you don't know, that's my title today. Where is God in all of this? And so for some, God is actually a missing piece. We may have several missing pieces in the picture, but for some, God tends to be a missing piece. But nevertheless, always God is there with you. Always, always. You just don't know it. Sometimes it's hidden from you, from your awareness. And sometimes that's the missing piece, a sense of understanding what is going on in the world. And when it seems to be ongoing, and we're facing hardships and difficulties and challenges and lots of different fears coming up within us, it's a question. You know, one of the teachings in Unity and in New Thought that has always really was a most powerful, clear, meaningful teaching from the time I found Unity and New Thought all the way through all the years was that profound and powerful, simple teaching that God is good. God is good. And all things work together for good for them that love God. And to me, I've always found strength in that. I've always resonated with that. God is good. and all the time, not just sometimes. And so we may not understand, and the pieces of the puzzle may not come together, but I have to hold to the fact that God is good. And all things will work together for good for those who love God, meaning those who love the principles and the practices that we've come to learn and apply them. That's the key in loving God, I feel. And so no matter how bad things may be or appear, the spiritual teaching that we need to hold to always are several things here. And that is, conditions and circumstances are temporal. This came to pass. It didn't come to stay. Another is, happy times and difficult times are all part of life's curriculum. Another is that there's something here for me to learn. Another is that there is something being asked to be changed in me and perhaps in the world as a collective. And also that there are answers and solutions that are present here at this time, in this moment, waiting to be acted upon. And that the good, something better, actually awaits just around the corner when there is a momentum swing in consciousness. That the good I seek, the good we seek, is seeking us. Those are key principles and ideas to adhere to and hold fast to during difficult times that seem to be ongoing. You know, we live in an imperfect world, because we're all in the process, really, of perfecting ourselves. Yes, there's a perfect part of us, but we are in the process in consciousness of bringing that forth. That has a lot to do with the dynamics of us and our growth. We are being perfected. We are being awakened. We are being healed. We are being moving into self-realization, the different terms that you want to use, but essentially we're being perfected. And you may recall the Apostle Paul, where he said, "For now we see in a mirror dimly. Now I know in part." That's in 1 Corinthians. Now I see in a mirror dimly. Now I know in part. And a mirror is what? It's something that reflects back. And what he's talking about here as a metaphor is that it is the law of consciousness, that essentially what we see is a reflection of what is within. And that essentially what we see, if we see with fear, it dims what we see. And it divides. Fear separates. It separates us not only from others, but it separates us from ourselves, from our higher selves. And when we're separate from our higher selves, then we're not really aligned with the energies of love and peace and joy and oneness that are the character and nature of the divine, the divinity that lives within all of us. And so fear does not stop death. It stops life. It stops life. And I know we're facing a virus, COVID-19, and it is very contagious, but let us not forget that also highly contagious is love and patience and faith and understanding and positivity and the things that are the true character and nature of the divine that lives within us. That's what we're to bring forth in whatever it is we may be facing, no matter how difficult and no matter how long it seems to linger on. Because now we see in a mirror dimly. But then we will grow up spiritually, as Paul speaks of it, because we see as a child and see dimly, and then we become an adult and we see face to face with the truth, and we essentially know who we are. We, instead of seeing in part, we see in the whole picture, much as the pieces of the puzzle come together. We see our connection in our world with each other and the part that we play. It's a powerful dynamic that happens that he's talking about. And one of the things that he said, not only then will I not know in part, but then I shall know, he says, this is a quote, I shall know just as I am also known to God. So as God knows you, you will come to know yourself as well. And then he says, and then these three will abide in you. Faith, hope, love will be in you. But the greatest of these is love. That's where that verse comes from. Where we go from dimness and knowing in part to knowing face to face with as God knows us. And yeah, that's a journey, and that's what we're here, and that's what we're learning about. As we remove layers of dimness and darkness put there by fear, we begin to move back and back into the wholeness of the full picture that we are, as we're held to be by God, which is a loving being, a caring being, a compassionate being, and intended to feel and experience peace and joy. It's there, it lives there, even though it may seem to be gone or apart from you now. There's a story of a spiritual student, and this spiritual student was just full of the vibrancy of seeking to know and understand. And he burst into the study of a great master who was a rabbi, and he was studying there. And all out of breath, the seeker asks the rabbi, Rabbi, what is the way to God? What is the way to God? And the rabbi looked up from his studies, and he answered, there is no way to God. For God is not other than here and now. And then he said, then Rabbi, what is the essence of God? The rabbi said, there is no essence of God, for God is all. And then he says, Rabbi, well, tell me the secret that I might know that God is all. And the rabbi takes a deep breath and sighs and says, my friend, there is no way, there is no essence, there is no secret. The truth you seek is not hidden from you. You are hiding from it. That was a powerful story for me, and I hope it is for you. So the truth that we seek, the God we seek, the good we seek, it's not hidden from us. We are hiding from it, and we're hiding from we're hiding behind the darkness of negative systems of thought, limiting beliefs, a dim perspective, these different things that get in the way of the light shining through. There is a saying you've heard, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, that's not how it works. It's actually the opposite, as you know. You'll see it when you believe it. In fact, the late Wayne Dyer wrote a book that said, you'll see it when you believe it. It starts within. Now, Jesus, as you know, was Jewish, and he often was referred to as rabbi and teacher, and he came into an imperfect world. And when he left this world, he left it an imperfect world. Now, the teaching is that he was a perfected being, and he modeled a way of bringing that perfected beingness into the world, but then it was left to us to live it, you see, and to understand it and to apply it. And so how did he do that? How did he bring that? How did he teach it? It was all through love, unconditional love and oneness. And he taught God is love, and he said, I and the Father are one, and he said, follow me. And so it's about love and oneness. End of story. Now we have to apply it, and that's not always easy. Love casts out all fear. So some of you are familiar with the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is a body of mystical Jewish writings that penetrate into some deep spiritual ideals and teachings. Well, as I understand it, the Jewish teaching is that God is unknowable, but we can know aspects of God that we can learn and have revealed to us. And they teach that light is the metaphor for that revealing process, the light of God coming in and taking away the darkness and the dimness and knowing the truth. That's a process of spiritual growth, a part of what we are all in process of. And one story from the Kabbalah tells of a time when God, who is known in the Kabbalah as the Endless One, wanted to create the world, much like our creation story in Genesis. But this is coming from the Kabbalah. And he used, it says in the story, he used his endless light to create a round sphere, like a globe, like the earth, like we live on. And that within that sphere, God created vessels. And he sent a ray of light into the vessels. He used the term vessels. But because the vessels were unable to contain the light, it says they broke, and the cosmos went into a state of chaos. Interesting. And the Kabbalah explains that life then is a process of repairing and fixing and reconstructing these vessels so that one day they'll be capable of holding the light. So do you see the metaphor in that story from the Kabbalah? You see, we are the vessels of God, okay? And we are in this world, and we have we're not broke, we have broken away, in a sense, from who we are. And the chaos that is reflected in the world is when vessels are not capable of holding the light. And we must enter, therefore, a process vigorously of looking at the part that we play to be able to hold the light again, where we're capable of holding that light. Now, an interesting note that ends in this story is that it ends by stating, although the light it was talked about as surrounding that globe or that sphere, it still also filled it. And though it seemed as though the light had been removed, it mysteriously really remained, and it really never left. And so it is with us. It may seem like, where is God in all of this? But God has never left, and that we must really know and understand. God is right here. The light is right here. The good is right here. The good coexists with all the circumstances and conditions that may be around us in the outer, but the good coexists and is waiting to be discovered and brought forth. It's kind of like reconstructing our own consciousness according to the Kabbalah story. So we live in an imperfect world, and in an imperfect world there are a mixture of extreme levels of consciousness that are going to be reflected. There can be from the very low to the very high, from the very separate and apart to the oneness of blissfulness, and all varies. And we need more of us to be in oneness, not separation, and to do that work, that repairing, that fixing, that reconstructing of our own consciousness. So, you know, in the Bible, there's a wonderful book, actually, that I'm not sure too many have read. That's a judgment, sorry. But it's called Habakkuk. And it comes after Nahum and before Zephaniah. It's fifth to the last book of the Old Testament. And it is only 3 short chapters long. But interestingly enough, this book is all about the issue of answering the question, where is God in all of this? Isn't that interesting? Habakkuk, okay? And so Habakkuk actually was a prophet of God. He was supposed to be having the answers and put it all together. And he was concerned about the people. And really the issue for him at the time, historically, was that they had just come out of all kinds of challenges and hardships and difficulties with this great power, the Assyrians, that had been over them. And now the power of the Babylonians were now coming and infiltrating and going and creating new hardships. And so Habakkuk in his writing was lamenting in this kind of anguished question of, how long? How long will this go on? How long will we suffer? How long will we have to wear masks and have social distancing? There are these questions in different eras of time and crises that come upon humanity. And the answer that he conveyed was that things may go on that look and feel horrific, but the righteous, the right-minded, those who are seeking to connect with the rightness of the highness of the divine within them must stand in their faith, he said, and defend God's goodness in the face of an imperfect world. Wow. What he came to and concluded is what we want to come to and conclude. Don't let perceptions of the outer sway you from the truth and the strength of a God that lives within you and has never, ever gone away. Habakkuk made this point near the end of his writings, actually, and this is what he wrote, quote, in this 3rd chapter. He says, "Although the fig tree shall not blossom, and neither shall fruit be in the vines, and the labor of the olive trees fail, and the fields yield not, and the sheep be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls." It's a lot of hardships. He says, "Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. I will joy in the God of my inner freedom of connectedness and allowing myself to contain the light and reflect the light. It is my job. I'm here to celebrate the here and now, the good that is here and now, the light that is here and now, the God that is here and now, that sustains and will always sustain. Can we do that? Can we do that? Can we look for the things that we can celebrate rather than only focus on what seems to have been taken away from us or changes we don't like for sure? It's hard, I know, conditions and circumstances. We're not saying this is easy. This is easy, and it brings up a lot of fear for people and separation. But another question besides the one of where is God in this, in all of this, it's the question of where are we in all of this? Where are we in all of this? How are we holding up? How are we responding? How are we reacting? Are we going into separation, and are we breaking away, not broken, but breaking away from the light and need to bring it back and recontain the light of God within us? We have to get comfortable with change, and we have to be careful not to go off the cliff into radical negativity. It's tough when things are hard. We have to reflect on where we are in that process of repairing and fixing or reconstructing in consciousness so that we can allow more light back in. In dark times, it's not the light that has gone away. It's often, in some way, our awareness of the light that has simply been crowded out by other influences, concerns, worries, fears. Happens to us all. The universe is not punishing us. The universe is responding to the vibrational attitudes that are dominant and overwhelming, that need repairing. But the more joyful that one is, the more well-being flows to you and through you. Even if a person can't see it, God is here, good is here, light is here. And at the same time, yes, we recognize that there are challenges and circumstances that are really frightening and bringing hardships. It's a test of all of our faith. And we are again to remember conditions and circumstances are temporal. They've come to pass. Have faith. Happy times and difficult times are all part of life's curriculum. There is something here for me to learn. There is something here asking to be changed in me or in the world or both. Answers and solutions are present. A way past this is waiting to be acted on. Something good or better is waiting. The good that I seek, that we seek, is seeking us. And therefore, look for the good. Look for the good. God's still breathing us. Our hearts are still beating. There are sunsets and sunrises, blue skies. There are places to go with our focus in the midst of all these things. With God, all things are possible, but God can only do for us what he can do through us. Recall with me again what Habakkuk's, his message was, about rejoicing and celebrating God and defending God's goodness in the face of an imperfect world. Well, some of you remember Louise Hay, and she wrote the book, You Can Heal Your Life. She formed Hay House, which is an organization which goes on today, doing a great work. And well, back in the 1980s, there were meetings that she held and brought together in Los Angeles, and it was the epidemic of AIDS that was going on at the time, and it was attended by the many who were diagnosed with AIDS, and their friends and their families would come together, and they would sing, and they would pray, and they would chant, and they would share their vulnerabilities in dealing with this difficult crisis. And one night, a mother stood up to speak in an auditorium of over 800 people, giving her the mic, and with eyes watering, she began by saying, "We have a ritual in our family." And she told how many years ago, her son, Tim, when he was fairly young, suggested that they celebrate everything. Everything. And what had happened is he had watched a video or a documentary that was about an orphanage in Africa, and it spoke of the resilience of these children and how even in the midst of famine and war and disease, these children had formed a bond together without any adult supervision or coaching. It was just instinctive that these children upon themselves came together and formed this bond. They simply decided that they would watch out for one another, that they would praise one another, that they would share each other's successes. And they knew that this journey of life seems lonely enough, and that together they could somehow create a better life. And they decided to share and celebrate everything, good or bad. And so she went on and she told how, well, one day Tim, her son, announced that they as a family were going to do the same. And they all obeyed, apparently, because they, over time, started to experiment with what it meant to celebrate everything. Whether it was a glowing report card from one of the kids or whether it was a traffic ticket, she said, we celebrated. Whether it was a new puppy or her husband laid off from work, she said, we celebrated. And the goal was to do their best at not judging events in their lives as good or bad, but viewing them as part of life's curriculum. And so, to add to the ritual, they started making cupcakes. And so nearly every day, they would stand at their kitchen counter, and they would raise up a freshly baked cupcake in the air, and they would make a celebratory toast for whatever event life had brought them. And so they continued to do this, and she said that when she developed cancer, it was challenging for her, very challenging, to stand at that counter and hold up a cupcake and feel that there was anything about that situation that she could celebrate. Yet, they had all agreed to do this no matter what. And so she did, day after day, week after week, with her hair falling out, nauseated from chemo. She stood with her kids and her husband and celebrated life as best she could. She said, you know, there was something about our unfailing ritual that kept pivoting my focus toward the good. And she added that she attributed being cancer-free at that time as she was standing there, having cancer-free for 5 years. She attributed it to the steadfastness of standing at that counter in the kitchen with her family, raising a cupcake and celebrating what was. We all have cupcakes that are hard to swallow, you know, in this life. And the challenge is great, to always have a perception of something greater or looking for the good wherever it may be, to celebrate life no matter what. So this morning, I'm going to challenge you to be like one of those children. You see what this is? It's a cupcake. I want to ask you and challenge you to consider all aspects of your life, the good and the not so good. and to imagine that you are, wherever you are at home with your family or whatever, to imagine that you are holding up an imaginary cupcake. I assume you didn't bake any cupcakes this morning, so hold up your cupcake, imaginary, if you are so led. If you are so led. And commit to celebrating life, all of it. A life where God is present, the light of God is present, the goodness of God is present, that you are one that will defend the truth that God hasn't gone anywhere, that God is here and now, and good is just around the corner. Where is God in all of this? God is here. God is with you, and God is within you, and let us never forget it. God bless you all.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.